Shine bright like a diamond. Find light in the beautiful sea. I choose to be happy. You and I were like diamonds in the sky. Great lyrics. Those are original lyrics to the song, and I want to thank our songwriters here for tweaking some of the other lyrics because they didn't quite fit for a church service. But that song really is our theme, not only for today, but for the entire month of April. The entire month of April, we're looking at shining our brilliance like a diamond. And I love how God works in synchronistic ways and how we're in tune even when we don't know we're in tune. And Barbara Joy told me after first service, the 6 o'clock service, which we've done already, and she was here for that. She came to me afterwards and said, do you know that the birthstone for the month of April, she happens to know this because her birthday is in April, who would like to make a guess of what the birthstone is for the month of April? It's a diamond. And I had no idea when I picked the theme, Shine Bright Like a Diamond, and we're going to take the next 4 weeks of this series of the 4 C's of diamonds, cut, clarity, carat, those, and what's the fourth one? I can't think of it at the moment. But anyway, we're going to, color, thank you, color, cut, clarity, carat, and color. We're going to take those each Sunday and explore them. So I just love how God worked, and thank you for telling me about that. But that's not where we're going to go today. Today, we're going to look at the idea of arising and shining into our brilliance using 3 elements of the Easter story. Now, I know that as I said when I lit the candle here in recognition of all the traditions that are celebrating and honoring this day, that there are different ways that this day is honored and celebrated. And in metaphysics, which is what we are a metaphysical church, in case you didn't know that, we like looking at everything actually that occurs in the Bible at different levels, and believe that the Bible is written at different levels, that there is levels of meaning, I should say. And the deepest meaning, and the one that we like to explore, is the meaning of everything that occurs, every story, every analogy, every event that happens in the Bible is an allegory for our own lives and our spiritual development. Most specifically, our relationship with the divine, our relationship with the God of our being. So that's how we look at everything in the Bible. And that's what we're going to look at today, or how we're going to look at 3 elements of the Easter story. Because they are elements that take us to our brilliance, that take us to that place of shining the light of God that we are. Now, we may feel like we need a bit of polishing. We may feel like we've got some rough edges. We may feel like, there's some grime and dirt over that brilliant light. We might not even see it in there, but I want you to know it is there. It is planted there by source. It is the source of your being. It is God in you and as you and through you. So you are already a bright diamond. You just might not know it quite yet or be shining it. But so to set the tone for today, I want you to say out loud, big and loud, I am bright like a diamond. And I am ready to shine. Now I want you to turn to your neighbor and say, you are so bright, I think I need my shades. All right. So the 3 elements of our Easter story. And they're all 3 very important elements. It isn't complete. The story of Easter, our story, actually isn't complete without all 3. The first one we might like to not have. We'd just as soon not have that experience. All 3 are important. So the 3 are the darkness of the crucifixion, the light of the resurrection, and the brilliance of the ascension. We're going to look at all three of those briefly this morning. So in the Easter story, as in our story, the light of the resurrection and the brilliance of the ascension actually can't happen until there's the darkness, or unless, I should say, there's the darkness of the crucifixion. We cannot rise and be resurrected if there hasn't first been a crucifixion. So if you were here on Good Friday, how many of you were here at our Good Friday service? Yeah, a handful of you. Several hands I see are because you participated in it. You were part of the speaker panel. Well, if you weren't here, just as briefly, our spiritual life coaches and ministers took the seven last phrases of Jesus on the cross on that Friday and explored what they mean and what he might have meant, again, metaphysically. What does it mean for us? And one of them that Susan Peacock spoke of, which was Today You Will Be With Me in Paradise, she was giving some context for that. And I want to give a little bit more context around when he said that. So the scripture tells us that between the 6th and the 9th hour, everything went dark. The scripture says darkness fell upon the land. And in the 9th hour, Jesus physically died. In Matthew chapter 27, starting at verse 51, it describes what happened when he died. And one of the things that happened is that the curtain doors of the temple were torn and fell off. And Susan gave a beautiful metaphysical explanation of that, or meaning of that, in that how in the past only the priests were allowed to go behind those cloth, that cloth wall or that cloth door, that veil. Only the priests were allowed back there. But metaphysically, when that fell away, it was giving an openness to everyone to be able to walk into that holy place. In other words, the veil between us and the divine got torn away so that we can connect and direct communion and don't need an intermediary. So, but if you were there, put yourself there. Everything is dark. Darkness has fallen across the land. The temple curtains are falling down. It says that there was a great earthquake, and in that earthquake, tombs opened and spirits came up out of the ground. Check the scripture. That's what it said. Can you imagine the fear, the terror, the horror in people's minds and in their hearts? Not only is all this chaos going on around them, something that they have believed in, many of the people around that day believed in Jesus, believed in his message, and they feel like that is now gone. He has just died. Everything they've believed in has been destroyed. This had to be, on the human level, a very, very difficult time. And of course, a very dark time. Devastating time. Now remember what I said a minute ago, everything we believe in the Bible has levels and layers of meaning. The meaning for us is, what is this saying about us and for us and our relationship, our developing relationship with the source of our being? Well, how many of us have ever been through the darkness of a crucifixion? We've had a death, a literal death of someone near and dear to us has literally passed away, has literally died. Maybe we've had a death of a relationship through a divorce or a separation. Maybe we've had a death of a job that we loved, or the death of physical vitality that we had. We all have had our dark moments. And in those dark moments, we can get completely lost in that darkness. And we can forget that there is a source, that there is light, that there is the divine right there. We can forget. Just like I suspect those people that day who are standing around and watching this devastating thing happen and seeing all the chaos and the darkness, they forgot that there is a source greater than what was going on. And we can forget it too. In a room this large with this many people in it, I suspect there's at least one person, and probably more than one, who are having their own dark night of the soul or a crucifixion experience right now. And if you are, I'm so glad that you are here, because I affirm and know that there is something in this morning that helps move you to the second and the third aspect of our Easter story. Even if no one in here is having that situation, their dark moment, I think collectively we might say that humanity is going through a dark night of the soul at the moment. Politically, socially, culturally, environmentally, all of those ways, it feels like there is some darkness. Anybody agree with that? Yeah. Anybody get a little bit nervous about that? Anybody ever get afraid? Anybody forget to see God right in the middle of that? Right. Something is up for transformation. That is absolutely sure. And the only way that we're going to get to that transformation or to get to the resurrection is if we can see even a glimmer of light. We don't have to see the entire sun, but we at least have to see a glimmer of light. And I love this quote from Goethe, 19th century German philosopher, who said, "To be a traveler on this earth, you must know how to die and to come to life again." You must know how to die and to come to life again. We must see a glimmer of light, just a glimmer. That's all it takes, is to see a glimmer of light. And that's the second element of our Easter story. When we can see a glimmer of light, that's when the resurrection story begins. That's when the resurrection can occur. I tell this story a lot on Easter, and I wasn't planning to tell it, and I was called to tell it in the 6 o'clock service. I'll do it again. Many, many years ago, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, as the movie said, I worked for a law firm long before ministry. Perhaps even before, I can't remember. I might have started going to a religious science church at this moment. It may have been before. I can't remember. But we had one of our lawyers, a fairly young lawyer in the firm, and we were a fairly small firm, 30, 40 lawyers maybe, whose wife committed suicide. And it was a dark time for the entire firm, because our hearts went to John, the lawyer, and we were all devastated at his loss and at the despair that his wife must have been going through, and nobody, including her husband, knew that. And it was probably 6 months to a year after she had made her transition that he and I sat and had this deep, gorgeous conversation. And he said to me, and I will never forget his words, he said, "Michele, I didn't at first understand why my wife would have done that. I didn't understand." He said, "And then I went through my own darkness." And he said, "I felt like I was in a room that was pitch black. And I couldn't see anything. And I felt just utterly in despair, and I wanted to do what my wife did." And he said, and I had a realization that this is what it must have felt like for her, that there was no light, there was no end, there was no promise, there was nothing, there was only darkness, and I don't want that. And he said, "But for me," I was there for a bit, "but for me, suddenly it was like there was a door in the room. Even though I couldn't really see the door, I could see underneath it a tiny sliver of light." And he said, "I saw that. I saw that sliver of light. And it was that sliver of light that gave me hope. I thought, if I can see the sliver, that means there is more light." And he said, "It was because of being able to see that I found the door and was able to open it and come out of that dark room. And that is why I am here right now and able to continue to live my life." Well, that transformed me. That was a powerful conversation. And I think about it every year at this time when we think about the resurrection and the coming of the light. If you can just see a little glimmer of light under the door, that's all it takes. That's all it takes to begin the resurrection process. I love this passage out of Matthew. It starts with, it's chapter 28, by the way. When the first day of the week began to dawn, there came Mary of Magdala and the other Mary to see the tomb. Now, I'll take a little aside from that. I'll get back to that in a moment. But Mary, Magdala, and the other Mary had come to the tomb. In the books of Mark and Luke, not Matthew and John, but in the books of the Gospels of Mark and Luke, it says that they came with herbs and oils to anoint the body. Their master, teacher, has died. They've come to anoint his physical body. But I just wonder, and I can't be in their heads, but I just wonder if there wasn't a glimmer of light in them. There was a glimmer of hope that maybe that promise that he made was really true. And so I suspect, even though they came to anoint his body, maybe they came with just a sliver of light in their hearts that maybe he wouldn't be there. Maybe what he had said would happen, that he would rise again, had actually happened. I don't know if they were thinking that, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were. And what did they find but an angel? And the scripture in Matthew continues to read, the angel of the Lord came down from heaven and went up and rolled away the stone from the door and sat on it. I've given a whole message on just this passage. We'll do that another Easter, but it continues to read, his appearance was like lightning. There we go. There's our light. And his garments were white as snow. There's our light again. And for fear of him, the guards who were watching trembled and became as if they were dead. They couldn't handle that light. But the angel answered, saying to the Marys, saying to the women is what it says, but I like the Marys, you need not be afraid, for I know that you are seeking Jesus who was crucified, but he is not here, for he has risen just as he said he would. That's the Easter promise. Just as he said he would, he has risen. We too can rise when we see the light into a new way of being, into a new life, into a new expression, into another turn around our evolutionary spiral upward. The crucifixion had to have happened. The darkness needed to happen to send us around that spiral. So up we go as we begin to see the light, as we awaken to the light. Ernest Holmes, our founder, in the textbook, in our Science Mind textbook at page 413, said, to practice the presence of God is to awaken within us the Christ consciousness. Christ is God in the soul of humankind. The resurrection is the death of the belief that we are separate from God. For death is the illusion alone and not a reality, because God did not die. What happened was that we awoke to life, and I'm going to say we awoke to light. The awakening must be on our part, since God is already life. So again, the promise of Easter is the promise of the awakening to life, which occurs when we open our eyes to the light that is already there. I love the words of Walter Starkey, a great modern-day mystic. He made his transition a couple of years ago, but wrote many books, including one called It's All God. And in It's All God, he says, the breaking up of old forms is Easter's prelude to a new level of life on earth. Death and resurrection don't come once in a lifetime. Every time there is a divorce, a partner dies, one loses a job, or every time there is any shift in consciousness whatsoever, the old identity dies and a new one is born. Every shift in consciousness brings an identity crisis. But if we understand and welcome our personal Easters, we will be born again into a better place. Unfortunately, we have been trained to believe that crucifixions, or the dark or shadow side, represent failure and should be avoided. Instead, when we see it as the flip side of resurrection, as no more than a stage in the creative and divine process, we will come out triumphant. So every time we shine the light of truth, the light of God, the light of knowing, the light of higher spiritual ideas, on anything that is dark, negativity in our own hearts, in our own minds, in our own worlds, whenever we shine the light of God on it, there is transformation. The Apostle Paul said, be ye transformed By the what? Renewing of your mind. So my question this morning, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, actually. Here's the first. I'll come back to it later and ask it again. But I'm actually inviting you into a new way of being this morning. Because Easter is a very powerful energy. Very, very powerful energy. Billions of people across the planet are joined together in this energy. So what we make commitments to on this day are like amped up with the energy of our world and high vibration energy. So my first challenge or commitment that I might ask of you is, what are you going to agree to? Are you going to agree to your smallness or your greatness? To your dullness or to your brilliance? To your sense of separation from the divine source of your being, or to a sense of connection to the divine source of your being? What are you going to commit to agreeing to? And here's the deal. So, we have 60,000 thoughts. Research has shown we have 60, not 16, but 60,000 thoughts going through our head every day. 60,000 thoughts every single day. I suspect a good number of them are small thoughts about ourselves, are dull thoughts about ourselves, are thoughts, if not directly, indirectly, about our disconnect from source. Do you know, I just heard this the other day, and it's like it makes total sense. When we have those thoughts, we have about 10 seconds before an unconscious thing happens. And the unconscious thing that happens when we have any thought, actually, but I'm using those this morning specifically, is the words, subconsciously, not necessarily consciously, I agree. So we have a small thought about ourselves. We've got about 10 seconds before the I agree kicks in. We have a dull thought about ourselves. We have about 10 seconds before I agree kicks in. We have a sense of separation, a thought of separation about ourselves. We have about 10 seconds before I agree kicks in. And guess what? What we agree to, we experience in our lives. So you got 10 seconds to flip that. Flip it from dullness to brilliance. Flip it from smallness to greatness. Flip it from separation to connection. Give it 10 seconds and then have the I agree be with those things. That's one of my challenges to you this morning. What do you think about that challenge? Are you ready to take it? Is that an Easter promise you're willing to make to yourself this morning? Well, good, because when the 5 of you who said yes do that, just saying, but I did hear about 5 or 6 definite yeses, some coming from here, a few over there, a few of them smattered around. That's when the true miracle happens, and that is when the ascension into brilliance can actually occur. That is when we can truly take that spin around our upward spiral of spiritual and conscious evolution into that next iteration and expansive way of being. As long as we're here on this planet, we are here to evolve. We're never done as long as we're here. As long as we're here, there is evolution to occur. And when we say yes to the light and to those things I just said, we take another spin around, and then there is a brilliant moment of ascension. So about that, from our Easter story, in Luke chapter 24, starting at verse 36, it says, "And while they," meaning the disciples, "were discussing these things, Jesus came among them and said to them, 'Peace be with you. It is I. Do not be afraid.' They were confused and frightened, for they thought they saw a spirit." Now, the rest of the scripture, which I won't read because it's a little bit long, I'll summarize it here. For many, many, many verses, Jesus is trying to convince them that he's actually there, that he's not a ghost, he's not a spirit, he's physically there. And I think it's really interesting that the way he finally got them to believe that he was physically there is he said, "I'm hungry, do you have anything to eat?" That is what took, it made them realize, oh my goodness, he must be real. And then they gave him fish, it says fish and a honeycomb. That's what the Lamsa Bible says. And he ate. And they must have gone at that point, oh my gosh, he really is here. And he really is real because he's eating. He then went on to tell them about how what has happened was happening to fulfill the prophecy of the Psalms and the prophecy of what we now know as the Old Testament. And then he said something crazy powerful for his disciples and for us today. He said, I will send upon you what my Father has promised, but stay in the city until you have been clothed with power from on high. And it came to pass, while he blessed them, he parted from them and went up to heaven. I will send upon you, not send to you, I will send upon you what my Father has promised. What is that? But stay in the city until you have been clothed with power from on high. Really important to know what metaphysically city means. City is not, at one level it is a place. Yes, it was Jerusalem. Stay here. Metaphysically, city refers to our minds. And not just our minds, but the place in our minds where goodness and truth conjoin. Jesus is saying to them, stay in that place in your mind where goodness and truth are conjoined until you are illuminated. Until, it said, you're clothed in the power of God. Don't leave that place in your mind until you get your own brilliance. Don't leave that place in your mind. Don't leave that agreement that I just invited you to make that several of you made. Don't leave that place. You're going to get another chance, all of you, to agree with that this morning. Don't leave that place until you have that illuminated moment. And it is in that illuminated moment that the brilliance comes. And now I'm going to make a bold and wild statement. Okay, are you ready for it? Yeah. We're a progressive group, right? So you can hear this bold and wild statement. Say yes to me. Let me know. Okay, good. I believe. No. Although I like that you did that. That was good. I like that. You might want to hear what I say before you say if you believe it or not. I believe that this ascension of brilliance in each of us, which we will call the awakening of the Christ consciousness in us, is actually the second coming. The second coming that we hear about and read about traditionally is when Jesus descends back upon this earth. What if the second coming is when each one of us ascends into the brilliance of the God beings that we are meant to be? What if each one of you would play a role in the second coming, and that it is something that happens not sometime down the road, but here in this room this morning? And that you are it. And that you are it. So today, as I said before, is a very powerful day on which to make some powerful commitments. I'm going to ask these in the form of questions. You don't have to answer them out loud. But in your own heart, are you ready today to be a part of the second coming? Okay, I heard yeses up there. Nice. By realizing that the darkness of the crucifixion is part of the Easter story, and it's part of our story. But it's not the end, it's only the beginning. And to trust God even in the middle of it. And as you trust God in the middle of it, then do you commit this morning to begin to see the light of the resurrection, the light of Christ consciousness being arisen in you. Today, again, will you commit to letting go of the smallness, the dullness, the sense of separation, and in fact, step into your greatness, your brilliance, and your realization that you are of God, from God, and in God. If you're willing to do that today, then the master teacher, the comforter, our brother Jesus, his life, death, resurrection, and ascension will be lived again today and will have a deep and profound meaning. Because remember, we are meant to arise and shine. We are meant to shine bright like a diamond. We are meant to awaken. Let's close our eyes. Take a deep breath. Whew. And just move into a place in this moment where those questions that I asked you, those commitments that I invited you to make, anchor, sink in, and be made real for you. I'm actually not going to say very much because I want you to have space in yourself to make that commitment this morning. To allow any darkness that you may be experiencing personally right now, or you may be feeling our world's experiencing, or to remember that if it does come upon you, that it is just a moment, and it is a necessary moment for your evolution. Because something must die so that the new can be reborn. And as you remember to see the light, then you are resurrected into a new level of consciousness. And that is where then the ascension into your brilliance occurs. So commit to that this morning. Be with that. Be quietly and silently awakened to that truth.